And we're back. This time around we're taking a look at Tau Ceti Planetary Crisis. It's from Outer Limit Games. Those guys were nice enough to send me their prototype copy here that's been going around to conventions and things with them. And we're going to take a look at it. And I'm going to do a final review when the full version of the game comes out here in a few months. But this will give you a chance to look at it and see what's in here. Now keep in mind it is a prototype, so not all the components are finalized. I had to print out a couple things that weren't included. We do have the new rule book though, so that pretty much stayed the same. But there are a couple pieces that gotten broken during its shipping around and going to the conventions and things. But keep all that in mind, and we'll take a look. So the first thing we have here is the faction book. And I'm not sure if this is going to come like this in the final version. I kind of hope it does. It's kind of neat. And it goes through all of the different races and factions in the game, talks a little bit about them, talks about their specialties, and has a listing of all the different commodities available in the game. Kind of a neat little thing. Next thing we have is the rule book. This is one they obviously printed just for the prototype. But does a great job of going through and explaining everything. We've had a couple copies of this available online, so you can check it out and actually look through it ahead of time. But pretty much everything in here is laid out pretty easy to understand. There's a whole section for optional rules and so on. Now the player boards were one of the things I was missing. They normally are nice, bright, colorful. They match everything else as far as colors go. Because I had to print and play them, and there's 6 of them, I printed them in just black and white in negative colors to use as little ink as possible. It was kind of a cheap cop-out, but it gets expensive printing out a lot of these things, so you will get, they're going to be slightly bigger than this too, but you get nice colored boards that are going to match everything else. Next we have the Galactic Depot. These are where the different commodities are going to go, and the different parts to your ship that you can purchase. Now these are printed on a very thin paper. I'm hoping they're going to be chipboard when we finally get them. We'll have to see. Pretty sure they will, but I can't guarantee that. But looks nice nonetheless. Next we have the exchange. These are the rates that the various commodities in the game will be going for. There's going to be markers on here that go up and down as various crises happen across the system. Up here we have our turn tracker, and then up here are the crisis tokens that are going to be used throughout the game. Again, this is printed on that thin paper for the prototype here. I'm hoping they're going to be a chipboard in the final version. Next we have the player resource cards. This is another one I had to print out myself. They actually came out really hard to read on the printing play. I think it's because I reversed the image again to make them less colorful, but they have victory conditions on one side and resources on the other, which is basically the things you need to remember throughout the game. First few times you're playing, these come in really handy, and there's supposed to be one for every player. I only printed up 3, but next we have our various ships. And again, these are prototype ones, not the finalized ones. These are actually, looks like they were printed in the clear and then painted, where the other ones are supposed to be molded in the colored plastics. And the ships themselves are really cool. The only thing I'm a little concerned about is I believe that they wanted to go with the clear plastic on the bases, which is what they did on these. And it's very brittle, and this one actually just got dropped today as I was taking them out of the box and broke. And a couple of the other ones were broke when I got them, so I kind of had to glue them together just to get them to stay on there. But the final version of the game is coming with a really nice case to store these and the orbital station models in. So if you bought the deluxe version and you're getting these, there's going to be a lot better storage option, and hopefully they won't get broken. But keep in mind that those are pretty brittle, and if you do drop them, there's a good chance they're going to break. At least these versions. Like I said, hopefully the final version is a little better about that. Maybe they made them out of a softer plastic or something that's not so brittle. We'll have to wait and see on that. They do look cool though. Each of the races and factions and colors are going to have a handful of tokens here. You've got these round ones, which are your action tokens. You have these octagon cylinders. I'm not sure what to call that shape, but those you're going to be using for marking various things on your player board. You have the plus tokens, which are used for when your credits or energy get above the limit you can put on there. You have your claim marker for claiming a location on the map to explore, and your orbital stations. If you have the deluxe version of the game, you're going to get these actual models. And if you have the base version, you actually get a token with the image on there. And again, one of these is broken from the shipping and being sent all over the place. The final version of the game will have that cool tray in there to keep anything from damaging your models in transport. And then finally you have these cubes. Cubes are used in the game to denote resources. As you take over a point, you put a cube on there, and then you can upgrade a cube into a station. The cube goes to your planet. They're also used to draw out of the bag when the time comes to see if a crisis happens on your planet. You have a bag of various other markers. These black ones are used for marking your shields and weapon systems during combat. The white ones are used to mark the current going rate of things on the Tau Ceti exchange. Next we have our bag of Enlightenment. It's just a simple felt bag, but this is where you put all of the random cubes from the various races, and you're going to be drawing out to see which planet has the crisis currently going on. For the actual game board itself, you have these large tiles, which are the core systems. These contain the home worlds of each of the alien races, a couple other odds and ends, and of course the Tau Ceti star. And these are going to be placed before the game to set up the core part of the system where all the alien races start, and you build off from there. Then you also have this stack of smaller tiles called the outer limit hexes. And these are for whenever you explore an unexplored area off of the main system. You flip one of these over and you're going to place it where you're exploring. There's various things in here like asteroid fields and cosmic radiation belts. And of course the wormholes. They also have exploration points on here which you can get knowledge tokens from and expand your influence a little bit farther away from your home world. Because of the way the larger systems fit together, when you start adding in the smaller hexes, you get gaps like this. And they added away, I'm not totally set on these. I mean, I see what their usefulness is for, but they added these dark matter tiles, which you can place to basically fill in the holes. And they make it so this tile now is adjacent to this tile. They connect, so you can fly across here, where without them there's a hole there and you couldn't go from one to the other. And they can be done a number of different ways. There's a couple different shapes of them, but you could put one here and again make these two so you can jump across instead of having to go all the way out and around. I understand the concept and why they're there. I'm just not totally set on their idea, but the more you play, you kind of get used to them and they become less of a hassle. They're just something you throw out there without even thinking about. And the one thing this game absolutely loves are decks of cards, and there are tons of them. First thing we have is the Crisis deck. This is pretty much the namesake of the game. These are the various types of crisis that are going to happen on the planets. They come with an associated icon, as well as what happens because of them. And if these end up on the planet, the various bad effects happen, and you have to try to resolve them. If there's ever one of these on every planet, all the players lose. So there's kind of a co-op aspect to that. The much larger deck is the Specialist deck. This includes all the various specialists who are going to help you to resolve the various crises. Crises. I think that's the proper term. Lots of different ones in here, lots of different uses. The one thing that annoyed me at first is that these and the crises have the exact same card backs, which I thought made things a lot confusing. But they're colored differently, so it's easy to separate out. The major thing is that when they're in your hand, your opponents can't tell how many of each you have because they have the same back, so it's kind of nice that they have the same back. Next we have the knowledge cards. There's a handful of each with the various icons on the back. Now they tell you in the game you can stack them all up like this, and you just go through and grab the first one that comes up that has the icon you want. Or if you have the table space, we like to actually spread them out and make a separate pile for each. It just makes it easier to find what you're looking for if you have the table space for it, obviously. And then whenever you go to explore a location that has a various token on it, you flip the token over, you grab a card from the deck with the corresponding icon. Then it explains what's going on. You have a little bit of fluff text up here, the description of what you need to do, and then down here is the rolls or results you need to roll. Next up are the Interplanetary Mission cards. One of the actions you can take during a turn is to work on an interplanetary mission. A lot of these are just ways to make credits and things like that. And this one's a pick up and deliver. You're picking up supplies at that planet, taking it to that planet. Costs you 2 energy to do it. And then depending on how many spaces you earn, is how much money, or how many spaces you move, is how much Tau you earn. There's a bunch of different kinds in here. Just one of the different options of what you can do on your turn. Next we have our objective cards. At the beginning of the game, each player is going to get 2 of these. The book says there's supposed to be 40 here, and there's only about 20, so I'm not sure if it's a typo or there's going to be more of these in the final game. I think there might be more of these, but each player gets 2. You can fulfill either, both, or neither. They give you bonus points at the end of the game. These are secret objectives. Nobody else knows what you're trying to do. So as an example here, we have this one, which gives you 3 extra points if you provide 2 of each commodity to the Tau Ceti Authority. There's also ones that give you points for money, and so on. Some of the ones where you have to trade in commodities we found a little difficult to keep track of throughout the course of the game. So I'm not sure if we're playing them exactly correct, but we'll see about that. They do add a little interesting side objectives to people, though, who can get bonus points. So someone who looks like they might not win the game can all of a sudden come out from behind because of a bunch of bonus points from their objectives. Next we have the diplomacy cards. These could have just as easily been represented by a token, but they do have all the text on here, which is nice. And you can get these in game by helping out a planet in need. Cost you resources to do it, which ends up losing you points, but at the same time you can get some cool bonus abilities with these. You can also lose your diplomacy card by attacking other players. And I think they're going to do a little bit more with the diplomacy cards in the final version. I know we had talked about it in the forums, so we'll see where that goes from there, if they've changed it. I don't remember if it's in the newest edition of the rulebook or not. But next we have our exotic technology cards. If you upgrade your ship enough, you get access to exotic tech. There's one of these for each of the different exotic tech pieces. It explains what it does. You can only ever have one of these equipped on your ship. They're pretty much first come, first serve. And there's corresponding tokens that go on your player mat for each of them. Next we have the cabinet members. This is a newer addition to the game. It wasn't in my original print and play that I messed around with. One person's going to start off as the presiding officer, and you get various details and things about it. And then they're going to distribute these other roles to the other players. At the end of the Cetian cycle, which is basically after every player has had 4 action phases, you're going to redistribute the presiding officer to a new player. That player gets to, in turn, distribute out these. It is worth noting, at least in the version I have, it may have been corrected, that the card itself says end of the Cetian cycle. The rulebook actually said the end of the action phase, which would be 4 times per Cetian cycle. So, not sure which one is correct. We played it as the card because it seems like it'd be kind of tedious to do after every action phase. But have to check again that finalized rulebook to see which is the ruling they ended up going with. Now, there's a few things in here that are in the final game that didn't get included with this version. Starting off, there's the solo variant cards, which allow you to play the game single player. Originally, they were a player on the back of the player board. You could flip it over and it had like an AI type thing that lets you play the other players as NPCs. Those have changed to an actual card deck, so I don't have those. The other one is the advanced rule cards. There's a bunch of advanced rules who are spread throughout the rulebook, and those are on actual individual cards that you can have basically face up and on the table to represent which rules are in play. Next up, we have our captains, I guess you would call them. They're basically the guys who are going to be crewing your ship. There's not even icons on all of these. Again, they're prototype stuff, but each one of these guys has the race they're aligned with, and there's 3 per race, I think. There's a couple oddball ones in there. Icons may have changed, but so on there you have your primary stat and your secondary stat. Primary is always a 4, secondary is always a 3. Anything else you don't have a stat for is always a 2. All of them have a ability down here. They all have some sort of bonus to a skill check. And then down here is your starting Tau and your starting energy. And again, there's a wide selection of these. I think, like I said, there's 3 for each race, and there's 6 races, so lots to choose from there. Next, we have our galactic point markers. These are used to represent various pluses and minuses you get to your points throughout the game. And you can total them up at the end to help figure out who wins. Next, we have our various crisis tokens. These are going to be stacked up on the Galactic Depot, and whenever a crisis comes into play, you draw the one for the pertaining to that crisis. You flip it over, and you can see what commodity is affected on the various planet depending on the crisis that's in progress. Next, we have all our various system tokens for all the different ship systems you can upgrade. Each one has a level indicator up here. The more blocks you see up there, the more powerful the system. The more dice you get to roll when making the tests for them. They're also more expensive because of those. And they are a first come, first served. There's one of each block amount. And these all go in the marketplace. And as they're bought, they go away. And eventually your choices become less and less. So if you're interested in buying them, you need to be among the first people to get in there and get the ones you want to ensure you get what you're looking for. Then we have our commodity tiles here. You're going to have one of each of these face down in a pile that you're going to randomly draw from and put on each of the planets. And that's going to be whatever commodity that that planet is currently looking for that Cetian cycle. And those are going to rotate every 4 player turns basically as each cycle goes through. The rest of them are in a commodities pile where you can buy and sell from as the game progresses. Next we have are the knowledge tokens, and these are put face down like this on the various exploration points throughout the sectors as they come up. When you go to explore them, you flip them over. It tells you which of the knowledge cards that you need to draw and complete the test. If you complete the test, you get the token as well as the other rewards on the card. And then these can be used in combination with specialists to solve various crises throughout the game. They can also be used 2 for 1 to buy ones from the Galactic Depot to maybe get the proper token if there's one you're missing. Now, among those knowledge tokens are also Galactic Raiders. These look just like the knowledge tokens when they're face down. When you flip them up to explore, the number designates the size of the enemy fleet, what you have to deal with, and how much damage you have to do in order to destroy them. The couple games that I have played were with brand new players, and we actually didn't use this. I can see where it'd be a lot of fun, and I can't wait to try it. I'm probably going to do it in the next game I play, but we did not use these just to make things easier for the newer players to grasp. One less little thing to worry about, but definitely a cool option for the game. And of course, what would a cool game be without some cool dice? They're standard die 6s, but they have really cool icons on them. I like the tealish green color. And you're pretty much only ever going to be using 4 of these in the game, so they gave you 2 sets of 4 with the game. You can also buy these separate to get extras if you want. And then lastly, we have our damage gems here. These are used to represent damage to your various systems on your ship. If you ever receive more damage to a system than the level of that system, those little boxes in the corner. So in this case, this system's a 3. If you ever get 3 of these or more on there, the system's destroyed and can't be used again until it's repaired. The green ones actually represent poison or biohazard for various crises that come up, and they have a couple different uses throughout the game. But yeah, there are some handful of green ones in there to use for various things, but these are the ones you're going to be using more often to represent damage to various things. And that's pretty much it for all the components. There's a handful of extra things I'll get into at the end, but I just wanted to go over all that. So everything's said and done, set up. The game is a lot of fun to play. It does have a little bit of a learning curve, figuring out what actions you need to take, what things you want to do, where you want to go, and so on first. Knowing when to build orbitals, when to upgrade your ship, things like that. When to spend your tokens in order to resolve crises, or when to just let them go if they're not affecting you. Lots of different options and choices. The exploring the outer systems seems to be one that only happens later in the game once all of these exploration points have been taken. Things like that. Keeping track of your player board, there's a lot on there going on. You got your, I don't know if it'll show up on there, but this token here slides back and forth as you upgrade your ship or hire a new crew. You got your off camera on that side is the money that's going up and down. On this side is your energy, which goes up and down. And all your various systems at the top there as you upgrade them. Your captain card, of course, and things like that. Lots to keep track of. Once you've played a few games, a lot of it goes much quicker. One of the main things is the reshuffling of these tiles here at the end of each cycle to change the market around. Remembering to change the values on the market here as different crises take place. Also, at the end of each Cetian cycle, when the different resources come into play, these will change. It can greatly affect the way things are played. It takes a few rounds to really get the hang of. Once you've done it a few times, a lot of it is just busy work in between rounds. Drawing the tokens out of the bag to see who's affected. Oh, we got silver this time. The bag could be a little bit smaller, but in this, it lets you get your hand in there to really pull one out without seeing. I mean, there's only, if you fold it, there's only that much with all 6 players worth of cubes in there. So I think that's why they went with bigger, though, so you can get your hand in there without actually seeing. But definitely little nitpick things, nothing major to complain about. The amount of decks of cards kind of takes some getting used to, but coming from someone who's played Firefly, honestly, it's not that big of a deal. There's 10 times as many decks in there, and they're all these full-size cards. So, but yeah, the game is a lot of fun. It definitely is catered more towards certain players' taste. There isn't a lot of direct combat, which some people seem to like, some people don't seem to care much for. I mean, you have weapon systems and things you can buy. You can attack other players, but it really doesn't happen too often. More times than anything, you're attacking to destroy a orbital that's been built in a location. But yeah, it's definitely one that's your people I've played with either love or hate. It seems to be very little middle ground, which is kind of sad, but it is one that takes multiple playthroughs to really get a feel for, and I actually like it. It's taken a place. I think it might actually replace Firefly as my go-to space game right now. It's definitely a lot smaller on the table, and it looks great on the table too. Everybody, when we play it at the shop, who comes by, we always have people stop by and ask what game it is. And this is just the prototype version too, so we don't even have all the finalized components. So I can only imagine when you get everything nice and pretty looking, what people are going to say about it. And a couple little things on the end that I wanted to add. This one we actually used when I played because it's not actually mentioned in the rulebook. I think it was a Kickstarter unlock or something. I'm not even sure if it's going to be in the final game. But it's the hostile system of Altari. And it comes with its own knowledge icons that are in red and its own deck. And again, I'm not really sure if it's going to be all that much different from the base stuff, but I didn't play with it in my game, so I didn't really want to go over it too much here. Get into it in more detail when the final game comes out. And lastly was the Living Starship. This is actually an expansion that's available for the game. Again, I didn't go into it in too much detail, but it's an NPC ship that runs around and basically annoys people. And there's a deck of cards that you draw from to see what happens if they spawn and when they do, how strong their ship is. And again, that's an expansion. It's available separate. You can pick those up and add on to the game if you want. Overall, though, I think it's a really great game. I can't wait to get my hands on the final copy and get all the final components and everything for it. Definitely one I'm going to enjoy having in my collection. If I had to make a few nitpicky complaints, it's that a few of the rules, like redoing the supply and demand things every couple turns, kind of fiddly and time consuming, but once you've done it a few times, it's okay. The real major concern I have is the models with the clear plastic stands being brittle. Hopefully the better storage solution that's coming with it. It's a really cool package. I'll throw a picture in here. That holds all of the ships separate like that. Hopefully that's going to remedy that situation, but that kind of worries me a little bit. I hate having broken pieces in my games, so I hope that takes care of that. But other than that, there really isn't anything bad to say about the game. It does take a little bit longer than they suggest. I think the recommended is 30 minutes a game. I'm finding most of our games last around an hour, which still isn't bad compared to stuff like Firefly, which takes 3-4 hours for a decent game. So definitely still something quick, easy to get on the table. It looks great. It plays good. The fact that you can do missions to make money, you can do exploration to make money, you can do cargo runs between planets. There's lots of different options out there available, and it gives it that kind of a 4X type theme. The fact that it has a single player option and the AI system for it seems pretty good. I haven't played too much with it. I messed around with it a little bit when it first was announced and they showed us the player boards. Haven't really done much with it with the new system. I don't think a lot's changed other than just the way it's presented though. And the NPC expansion pack's really cool too. Adds an interesting twist to the game. I would have liked to see more of a risk and reward type thing for player versus player type combat. But I'm not a huge fan of PvP. So in my thoughts, it's pretty much right where it should be. It's there for the people who want to do it, but it's not a major factor in the game, which is fine by me. But I can see where people would have liked more depth in the actual PvP aspect of the game. Overall, I'm happy with it, and as I said, I can't wait to get my final version on my shelf with the rest of my games. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.